What's up, y'all? We are here for our Saturday night secret sermon. This is our Secret Teachings of Jesus episode. We do these every Saturday night. It's usually around midnight when I get to record these because I'm coming in from work, but it actually works out great because traditionally sages love to study late at night. There's extra magical powers when connecting with the Holy Scriptures in the middle of the night. And it unleashes an extra layer of protection over you. The veil is thin at this time of day. We're at the end of one day and in the threshold of the next. So it's a very special time. Sometimes they would actually go to sleep at like 6 in the evening after dinner and sleep a few hours. And then they would wake up at like midnight and study for most of the rest of the night. So it kind of works out that way anyway. So I like doing it this way. Okay, so we are currently studying from the Nag Hammadi scriptures, and we are in the Gospel of Thomas. The Gospel of Thomas is structured in just a list of these sayings that Jesus would say or things that he would teach, and they're all numbered out. Some of the other Gospels have more of like scene work that plays out. It's like you're almost reading like a play. People are going places and doing things and talking to one another. And usually those Gospels center around like Jesus's teachings and where he went and the miracles he performed and ultimately his crucifixion. But the Gospel of Thomas, as well as the Gospel of Philip, focus entirely on Jesus's teachings and not really what they did, where they went, and how things went. So, with the Gospel of Philip too, they're a little bit longer sections, and they're titled, and they're all very esoteric, very cryptic. They're things to consider the symbolism and meditate on them and let them sort of take root within you, and understanding unfolds over time. So we left off at saying number 23. So that's where we will pick up this week. And I'm pretty excited. So I've got to say, I'm a little dizzy. It has been a very hot weekend here. We have been up in the upper 90s with the humidity level at like 1 million. Like it gets into the hundreds down here. In the summer, usually in August and September, but the humidity has also been very high. So the heat index has been like up over 100 for the past couple of days. Like yesterday I went for a run and I actually had to stop and walk some of the way. I sweated so much. And so tonight at work, it was just like so hot in the building, even with the air conditioner on. It's just, the air is thick. I was just like lightheaded. So I'm a little bit disheveled, a lot disheveled, and mentally also disheveled. So bear with me, but I am very excited because this sentence that we're going to unpack, actually something stood out about it to me that reminded me of something that I had just read in the last few days in the Tikkune Hazohar. And over the last couple of days as well, my set of Zohars came in. So I have like hardback set of Zohar, and it's like 23 volumes. I'm so excited. I'm such a nerd. And then I also got the Kabbalistic Bible, which is the Old Testament with the Aramaic passages, like the writing in Aramaic, so you can scan the letters like you see here. And then the Kabbalistic commentary that explains the meaning and the lesson behind each of the portions of the Torah that are read throughout the year. And it is basically like the answer to what I've been looking for, because I'm like, I have been looking for what the Kabbalists would recommend as their favorite go-to like translation, or which Bible they think is the best as far as like true to the original. And so the Kabbalah Center actually published a set of those, and I just discovered them recently, so I ordered those and they showed up today. And then what else showed up is these little pocket-sized Zohars, like a whole pack of them, that are really good for like putting them in places where you want protection. They're very powerful, very miraculous. So they suggest carrying one in your pocket all the time, or in your wallet, or in your purse, or in your car. So I put one out in my car, I put one in my purse, I put one in my hiking bag where I go traipsing through the woods. You never know. So I thought that was so cool that I got those extra. All right, so anyway, the sentence that we are covering tonight made me think of this exact passage over in this set of books. There is a 3-volume set of works called the Tikunei Hazohar. And this is the commentary, the deepest commentary on the Zohar, which is the deepest commentary on the Torah. So I just happened to be reading this book on my own and came across a passage that was really strange, and I actually dreamt about this passage. And then I got up and I read, like I had read it earlier, and then a few days later, like I dreamt about this passage again, and then I went back and I read it again, and it was just so odd, and nothing about it like stood out as far as like being really clear, because it was very cryptic, but it totally relates to what this is today. And I don't know if we're gonna have more questions than answers by the time we get done, but I'm excited to just dig in and get to read you guys a few portions from the Tikunei Hazohar. So we got Chart standing by, so we're real serious tonight. Got lots of study materials. All right, so I will read this to you guys. I will read this to you a couple of times through, and then I will mention the footnote here, and then we will unpack. Okay, so Jesus said, "I shall choose you, 1 from 1,000, and 2 from 10,000, and they will stand as a single one." So Jesus said, "I shall choose you, 1 from 1,000, and 2 from 10,000, and they will stand as a single one." One more time. So Jesus said, "I shall choose you, 1 from 1,000, and 2 from 10,000, and they will stand as a single one." Now, the footnote mentioned here, it says Deuteronomy 32:30, Ecclesiastes 7:28, and the Pistis Sophia, portion 134. So I do remember in the Pistis Sophia, there's a section that describes, and I think we've covered it on one of these episodes before, but there is a section that describes how Jesus, the spirit of Jesus, before he was born through Mary, was preparing for his mission on earth, and he was in the upper realms, and he was arranging the transmission of the souls of his disciples. He was figuring out where they were going to be born and with what women. And basically, long story short, he took the souls of the disciples, like from the upper realms where he is from. So they didn't necessarily come from the same level of souls, from the same mixture of souls that the average person comes from. The disciples actually came from kind of a higher tier of souls, and Jesus even gave some of his power to them even before they were ever born. And then they had to, like their mothers had to be prepared and touched in order to be the vessels that could birth them through. And so they were pre-chosen before they were chosen on earth. And so when they reunified, I guess, after the physical life, they would return back as like they were one unified group. They were one soul family, right? Because they all came from the same place and they were brought here for the same purpose. And so that they would be taken, and after they took the flesh suits off, they would go back to being one. And even Jesus said at one point, like, you will be despised and people will see you as different. And it ties into that they come from a higher place. They had to be prepared to essentially deal with the same heat that Jesus dealt with, because they were all persecuted and pursued by the Roman Empire after Jesus's death and resurrection. So Jesus said, I shall choose you, 1 from 1,000 and 2 from 10,000, and they will stand as a single one. Now remember that those numbers, I shall choose you, 1 from 1,000 and 2 from 10,000. And remember what we were talking about, how they came from another place, a higher realm than the average souls come from. So throughout history, the history of mankind, the wisdom of the Kabbalah, which the Kabbalah is, it means to receive. But basically, the Kabbalah is the unified, like, comprehensive expression of reality. All the dimensions, the attributes of the Godhead, the levels of consciousness in the human soul, all of it is in this glyph, and so the tree of life. And the wisdom of Kabbalah is the explanation and all the information that is associated and hidden and woven into this glyph. The Kabbalah is the study of how to refine the human soul so that the human soul becomes more of it returns back to its mirror image of God's attributes, not the lower evil inclination or the egoic inclination. So the Kabbalah, it is said, was given to Adam first in the Garden of Eden. It was given to Abraham, Noah, Moses, David, Jesus, like all of these great tzaddiks, the righteous people, the prophets. They were given the Kabbalah intuitively, like they channeled that information through. They weren't, connected through time and space at the time. They were, they existed kind of, in generations apart, right? So, and in distant places. So how does that kind of information get to one person or another during those times? Well, the angels, right? Moses was known for, he spoke, God appeared to him in the bush. He had a direct relationship with God. And, it's said that, I think maybe the angel Metatron or one of the angels gave the Kabbalah to Adam in the garden. But I guess it wouldn't have been Metatron because, didn't Elijah or Enoch was supposedly ascended and made into Metatron. So, but one of the angels had given it to Adam in the Garden of Eden. And so they, then after the initial patriarchs, they would pass the secrets of this ancient, hidden code underneath the Bible, underneath the Torah. They would pass it they would call it mouth to mouth. So a teacher would orally give all of this information. I mean, I just ordered 23 volume. It was like Encyclopedia Britannica. You think about these teachers for generations and generations and generations and generations until this generation, until the Mashiach, the age of Mashiach, until the last 100 years or so. Teachers have been passing this from one teacher to maybe one student in a town. That's how they describe it. It would be one in a town or two in a village, or, one in a city. Like, it would be like so few people, but there would be one master teacher, and he would have one or a couple of students, and he would pass the Kabbalah to them orally by telling them, and they would have to like memorize all this information. And they may have had pieces of it written in different places, but it wasn't in an organized text until later when the Zohar was scribed out. And that's a whole story in and of itself. But the point is being, going back to this passage, I shall choose you 1 from 1,000 and 2 from 10,000, and they will stand as a single one. So just like those teachers and the sages and the righteous that passed this sacred knowledge down from, one teacher to like 1 or 2 people in a village, and so on and so forth. And so basically what the Zohar is, or what Kabbalah is when you look at the Old Testament, when you look at particularly the 5 books of the Torah, sometimes the stories can go really off the rails, and you're like, what is the context? Like, what are we supposed to be taking away from this? Like, I don't understand. And obviously we see that, people can use those words as blunt objects and try to weaponize them for people who who don't have deep Bible literacy. Now, unless you study theology in any kind of like formal or traditional way, you may not know that in Hebrew or Hebraic exegesis, there are 5 levels of interpretation that should be considered whenever looking at scripture. And the first and obvious and most simple is the literal meaning of, do you understand the passage? Can you understand what's going on? Do you know enough about the context of the time and place to be able to comprehend what you're reading? And then it goes deeper from there. And so there are hidden hints and secrets in the metaphors and in the parables, but also within the choice of each word used. In the Hebrew language, each letter has a numerical value, and the words together have like a combined numerical value. If you're at all interested in numerology, then you're familiar with how it works. Gematria, which is the Hebraic version of this, is very, very, very similar, but it is a little bit different, I think. So I wouldn't go as far as to say that they're the same thing, but very similar, same idea, slight differences. So each word has a numerical value. And so a lot of times when you're reading a passage, they choose a word very specifically to denote and imply a meaning based on the common numerical value of that word and another word. And so sometimes they might point out like, oh, this word has the same numerical value as that word. And you can get more information about what is implied in the meaning of the passage by those common words and their common numerical values, right? So many secrets there. So the Kabbalah was something that was so powerful though, because like when you get to the deeper layers, the 4th and 5th layers of the depth of the Torah, it's like all the spiritual technology, the secrets, the deep spiritual esoteric secrets of what's going on. It's not just the moral coming and going, ethics, purity laws, stuff like that. There are deep, magical, miraculous reasons why each thing is done during each observation of each holy day or holiday. Everything has like this working order, like the universe has this beautiful machinery to it. The cosmos have this beautiful machinery to it, both in the material expression and in the immaterial expression. So the Kabbalah is like the comprehensive whole thing. And it's just layers and layers and layers and layers, and it just is almost never ending amount of knowledge. And so this is a very powerful knowledge because it actually unlocks our ability to do the tikkun correction that transforms our darkness, and then actually activates those divine human qualities within the self. So if given into the wrong hands, if someone mastered the Kabbalah, they could use it for very evil and powerful ways, which we see, a lot of people have tried to do that, over time. They've tried to misuse and make it into a dark magic. So the reason why it's always been kept secret is because of that. It wasn't necessarily trusted with the general public. Even at the time of Jesus, there were so many people that would get on a tear and go around and try to convince everyone that they were the Messiah and that they had the answers. And a lot of people that were, not a lot, but some people who had gotten hold of the wisdom of Kabbalah, they would go around and use that and try to say that they were the Christ or they were the Messiah. And this is all, it all revolves around the age of Mashiach and the Mashiach consciousness. And when the people are all corrected, we become united as one, and we live in harmony and peace and prosperity and fulfillment, right? It's the age of Mashiach. So the secrets of Kabbalah have been passed down one to another by mouth until the generation of Mashiach. Now, the Tikkune Olam, the collective human correction of our collective soul, plays out over 6,000 years, so that we keep coming back and reincarnating and trying to repair, correct, elevate our soul. And in the goal that we all are gradually reaching that state of Christ consciousness, the Mashiach consciousness, so that we can all become one and united as one, bringing in the era of Mashiach, where we are all living in peace and in perfection and perfect harmony and unity, and in the realm of miracles, where like no one gets sick, and things are miraculously healed. So the age or the generation of Mashiach, so in that 6,000 years, there is the first 2,000 years where the light is concealed, where we didn't have an up close and personal relationship with God yet. And so God is gradually revealing himself to the people that we meet in the early Old Testament stories in the first 2,000 years. And then the second 2,000 years, it's like there's not as much concealment. There's more revelation revealed. We get closer to God, but then we come to sort of the complete maturity of the covenants that have been had so far, right? So there was the first 2,000 years, and then the covenant was kind of revisited, and the temple, had some reformation and things and evolution changing, and God, had a new covenant that he made. Like there was one with Abraham. I feel like he maybe did, and he updated it even with Abraham, and then later he had the flood. Earlier the flood had destroyed the earth with Noah, then with Abraham, and then the destruction of the temple happened, and then after that, like the destruction of the temple was like kind of like another breaking of the covenant and finding a new way. It's like every so often the status quo has to lose its stability and be broken down and revisited and reevaluated. We need to revisit our relationship to make it stronger. We're ready to go to the next level, right? That's what's been happening. So then we get to the beginning of the last 2,000 years, which that was when, what happened about 2,000 years ago? Jesus entered the scene. He was introducing the seeds of what would grow into Christ consciousness over the next 2,000 years, when the light would be more revealed in greater revelation. And so Jesus planted the seeds, but it's like we look back and we're like, wow, we've hardly come along an inch since then. We're still like fighting over the same things. We're still barbaric in so many ways. Have we grown? Have we become more Christ-like? And see, that's why we are in these accelerated times where everything is so extreme, and the darkness that we're seeing and the corruption and the perversion, it's so extreme because it's going to take seeing the absolute horrendousness of the darkness for us to completely rebuke it and repudiate it, and to see that, we want none of it. When it's not so obvious, it's just like it can like kind of fester unnoticed, but we can't have that and be in the age of Mashiach. And so all of this contaminants are being revealed so that they can be transformed. We can't transform them if they're not brought into the light. Even God says he can't help us transform what the light has not touched. If we're not aware of it, it can never get corrected. So we are in the last couple of 100 years of that 2,000-year stretch of the final 2,000 years. And so it was said that the wisdom of Kabbalah needed to be hidden and kept secret and only passed down to the few that could be trusted with until the age of Mashiach. And so over the last 2,000 years, and starting around the time of Jesus, that is when also Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who wrote the Kabbalah, or he wrote the Zohar, he went into hiding in a cave for 13 years, and he channeled through this one sort of streamlined commentary on the Old Testament. Whereas, say in the Talmud, it's tractates and tractates and tractates of groups of, imagine like our government, imagine like the Senate and the Congress, like that's the size of, what it was like, these groups of rabbis and priests back in the day, like talking about all these things and debating them. It was basically like our government, but it was like the Jewish government. So, and it was centered around the Torah. So, let me catch my thoughts. Where are we? Oh, yes. So the secrets of Kabbalah have been passed down in secret until the last 2,000 years. And so the Zohar was written. It was still in obscurity until a little while after that, maybe a couple of hundred. I don't know the timeline exactly. But in the early, like hundreds, like around the year, like 300, 400, the like Kabbalah started to kind of gain some more momentum, and it started to like get around into the lower areas of Europe, and it kind of grew from there until about 100 years ago. There were a few modern genius Kabbalists who had wrote some very important collections of commentary, and they started to popularize Kabbalah a little more. And I mean, they would have like a handful of students instead of like one at a time, but their writings ended up getting more popular, and they were able to, I think, publish the Zohar even on a small scale so that it would be available to read. Like, I mean, this is stuff that like you weren't even allowed to study this. Like, women couldn't even study this. People could only study it if they were of a certain age. For so long, it was kept so protected. And when it did start coming out, there was a lot of controversy, a lot of heat, because are people ready for this? Can they handle it? Is it the time? Do we keep it behind the gates, But this is the time that it is to become more popularized so that people know how to do the work of the tikkun healing. And we need an accelerated path for the age of Mashiach. And now we barely have it, but hopefully we have enough to merit this, but our consciousness is such that we can comprehend and understand and contextualize now. And I think that also part of what helps is the popularization of quantum mechanics and quantum physics, because the mystical in the scientific realm, they touch, right? The spiritual realm and the physical material realm, they touch, and the mystical sciences and the quantum sciences, they're cousins. They just have different language of talking about things. But actually, the Kabbalists have known a lot of things that, like, quantum physicists are just now figuring out and being able to prove. The Kabbalists have been talking about this for ages and ages. So now we are in the last part of this 6,000 years, and we are, like, the wisdom of Kabbalah is spreading. People are starting to pay more attention. They're starting to wake up to the fact that, yes, the Bible has been misunderstood and it has been weaponized. And I think that people are mostly understanding it still at a surface level, at a physical level. And a lot of people who have done a lot of deconstruction, they try to go back and they try to understand it from more political context and more social context at the time. But I still think that they don't have the relief that they need with the passages that are just, like, so barbaric and so seemingly unjust. It's like, what does this mean? Why? And then why are they talking about these other random things? Because it's not a literal, like, the lesson isn't being taken from the literal story. In fact, in this book, the Tikunei Hazohar, it mentions that only a fool would look at the clothing of a person and think that that's all that they were. Oh, I know everything about you. I've seen your outfit. I know your soul now. So too, the person who reads the stories, the clothing of the Torah, and thinks that's all there is. It's like, this is just the clothes that help us conceptualize, but it's really, the deeper meaning is in the symbolism and in these hidden codes. So it's a coded language. And there are symbolic things. And a lot of these words and codes, they have specific meanings. They're not just like, something for us to just, like, I don't know, wax on about, like, in a poetic sense. But I mean, we can, because it's a living word. So there's always more room for more insight and deeper insight and expanded insight. But that those interpretations can never contradict the original root meaning. Okay, so we've talked about the fact that Jesus pulled the disciples, he chose them, and he pulled them out of a higher place. He pulled their soul stuff out of the upper realms where he was from. And we know that from the Pistis Sophia. And then we know from the Kabbalistic sages that they would go from town to town and have one master that would teach one student or two students. And some would be one in a village and two in a city and three in a country, but they were sparse and few and far between because there were few people that had eyes to see and ears to hear and the ability to understand. If you've been watching these episodes for any amount of time and you have the pleasure of having sat in for any of Secret Book of James or the Gospel of Mary or the passages that I've read from Pistis Sophia, we all know that, like, none of the disciples, like, had nearly a clue of what was going on, but Mary did. She knew every time. She was right on it. She knew exactly what Jesus was referencing. She knew exactly what he meant and exactly what he was saying. And that's why she was his favorite person. He even described that once. I think maybe Philip or somebody asked him, like, why do you love Mary more than everybody else? And he said, well, I mean, if you were two blind people and then all of a sudden one day you could see and they couldn't, like, you wouldn't be able to relate the same way anymore, because I would all of a sudden see all these things that you couldn't see. And they were like, what do you mean, Jesus? And he was like, therein lies the problem. So same, it's like there were people who had this spark of light to be able to understand these deep wisdom concepts, but they were few and far between, and they were the ones that, like, they were the chosen ones who had to be entrusted with this sacred wisdom and the responsibility of having it and passing it down and passing it along and using it wisely. Okay, so Jesus said, I shall choose you, 1 from 1,000 and 2 from 10,000, and they will stand as a single one. So again, the more unified you are, the more we shed our layers of negativity, our layers of programming, our layers of ego, we gradually shed our layers of these things that we come to cling to as our humanity. And eventually we're just pure light. And we all are eventually, the goal is to be absorbed back into the all that is, all the one, right? On this tree of life, the one is up here, where the light is contained in one uniform, all that is, all that ever was, all that will be. Every color, every material, every person, everything is all in this pure white light. It contains everything, right? And as the light goes down through these filters, it becomes more condensed and more physical and more specific. Right? But as we shed those specific layers again, as we travel back up and we take off these layers of the flesh, of the skin, of humanity, of our lower personality, we're just that pure light again, and we get reabsorbed and we become one. Well, we do that in ways here when we have when we are unified in a common goal, or when we are unified in a common consciousness. The Kabbalah Center always talks about how they aren't like a religious institution. They're not even like necessarily an educational institution. They're an institution for a revolution, a movement, a conscious revolution. And so their goal is to be united in that mission and in that consciousness. And it, like, the more that we all understand and correct our souls together, and we do this work together and we share it together, we become as one unified force, right? When 2 or more are gathered in my name, let nothing be done asunder. Like, everything is possible to those who pray together, declare in the name of Jesus. And when they are united, it's like the more people that get added on into that unity, it's like the power grows. And it's the magic sauce is the unity. When the Israelites were unified right after the waters parted and they made their way to the base of Mount Sinai, they were like in that realm of miracles. They were in that Garden of Eden kind of perfected whole state, and they were having miraculous healings and they were witnessing miracles, because they were totally unified. But when they started to complain and they started to get negative and they started to have doubts and gripe and become like the division grew between them, and they would argue amongst themselves, they lost all of that miraculous protection. And then they started to become vulnerable to like these plagues and like things that would just like, they were always, if it wasn't one thing, it was another. And so it was because of their division, the unity protected them. So Jesus said, I shall choose you, 1 from 1,000 and 2 from 10,000, and they will stand as a single one. Now, this is where I'm moving over into reading this passage, or a few passages from the Tikkune Hazohar. This probably isn't going to make a lot of sense, but it might whet your appetite to have more curiosity and want to go deeper in your own studies. And I'll try to explain anything that I can explain, because a lot of this would take way too long to explain, but I still think it's good to hear what I'm connecting this with. Okay, so Jesus said, I shall choose you, 1 from 1,000 and 2 from 10,000, and they will stand as a single one. Now, I went back a little further. So I'll start from here. Okay. it's hard to give you context. These are portions of text from the Zohar, sort of mixed with commentary. And there are several passages that kind of, they're connected and they interrelate. So I am going to read them all. Okay. And I am within the exiled on the river Kavar, Ezekiel 1:1. This refers to the Dinur River, or literally the fire river, that issued and came forth, and tens of thousands of these ministering angels stood before him, set to judge, and the books were opened, Daniel 7:10, referring to the 3 books opened on Rosh Hashanah. Ironically enough, not at all, this is the month of Elul while we are preparing for Rosh Hashanah. Isn't it funny how all of these passages on Saturday Night Secret Teachings always line up with wherever we are in the year? And it feels random, but it isn't. So, and I am within the exiled on the river Kavar. This refers to the Dinur, or literally fire river, that issued and came forth, and tens of thousands of these ministering angels stood before him, set to judge. And the books were opened, Daniel 7:10, referring to the 3 books opened on Rosh Hashanah. In this very same Dinur River, souls immerse to cleanse themselves from their filth that contaminates them in the lowly world. Now, this river, so there's a secret in Kabbalah, and it's about hell and our death. And so every single person, when they die, they have to pass through, their soul has to pass through this fire that cleanses them of all the density that's left clinging to them, holding them down to this earth. Your disappointments, your hopes, your lazily spent days, your grudges, your anger, your inability to forgive, your obsessive clinging to certain physical things, unable to let go. Like, those all keep us tethered to this material realm. And so when we die, our soul is released, and we are ideally going back into the upper realms, but we have to pass through this fire in order to cleanse the density left in our soul that's weighing us down. So this fire can last up to a year, but not longer. So that is how Kabbalists would describe the idea of hell. Like, when you hear about these pits of fire, lakes of fire, rivers of fire, it's like we have to pass through them as a soul because we need it to cleanse. We need it to cleanse the contaminants, which I think it's crazy they use that word, because I'm always like, what is the word that I'm looking for? It's contaminants. So souls immersed to cleanse themselves from their filth that contaminates them in the lowly world. This angel Metatron, in the image of the righteous Zaddik, foundation of the world, meaning Yesod, called Kol, or all. For Yesod is not a sephira, or a sephira on its own, but only a composition of all the 5 Sphirot, which is the Dinur River from the aspect of Gevurah. And it is the river of small streams from the aspect of Chesed, the secret of small streams. And this is on the river Kavar. It's interesting too, because the fire river from the aspect of Gevurah is the aspect of judgment, and it's like the powerful soldier, right? And that's here, Gevurah. Now, exactly across from it is Chesed, mercy. So the bigger raging river of fire is judgment, whereas the small river, the small streams are aspects of chesed. Now, what are we like walking into on Rosh Hashanah? Judgment Day. We're waiting to see whether we're going to experience judgment for the year to come, which is big flame, big fire river, or do we get little fire river? Mercy, chesed. The less judgmental we are during the month of Elul, and the more willing we are to be merciful, understanding, forgiving, the more mercy we will receive for the year to come Judgment Day on Rosh Hashanah. The more we cling to our grudges and our hardness during this month, the more judgment we will expose ourselves to on Rosh Hashanah. So this angel Metatron, in the image of the righteous Tzaddik, the foundation of the world, meaning Yesod. So Yesod, foundation of the world. This is where like all of these aspects from the upper realms come down into like this concrete mixture that gets poured down into the material world here. And Yesod called Kol, which is all. Jesus said, I shall choose you 1 from 1,000 and 2 from 10,000, and they will stand as a single one. Kind of like the all, right? For Yesod is not a Sphirot on its own, or Sephirah on its own, but only a composition of all 5 Sphirot, which is the Dinner River from the aspects of Gevurah, and it is the river of small streams from the aspect of Chesed, the secret of small streams, and this is on the river Kavar. He asks, what is the definition of Kavar? And replies, this is Metatron. Kavar is the letter combination of Rechev, the chariot, to the central column, meaning Tiferet. Okay, so the chariot of the central column is Tiferet. Tiferet is here, the chariot of the central column. This is the Christ center. This is Christ consciousness. In the secret of the verse, he rode on a cherub and flew, Psalms 18:10, and this is the chariot of fire and horses of fire, from 2 Kings 2, verse 11, inclusive of 600,000 of chariots. So from the aspect, which brings us to the passage that reminded me of, I will choose 1 from 1,000 and 2 from 10,000. So from the aspect of the righteous life of the world, namely Yesod, it includes 180,000 chariots. And this is the secret of the verse. God's chariot are twice 10,000 and thousands of angels. God's chariot, whenever a prophet or a sage or a righteous person is named the chariot of the Sphirot, it means that they mastered this aspect and they represent this aspect on earth. The Christ, the mastered divine human, is represented by Jesus. Chesed is represented by Abraham because he was the most giving, the most hospitable, the most sharing. So Joseph, the king of Egypt, that was the keeper of the storehouse, he's the chariot of Yesod, right? So Jesus chose his disciples to be the chariots of his word, right? To be the ones that going out and spreading that gospel, spreading that consciousness. And they had to be masters of it. And they were even chariots of his energy because they knew how, or he gave them the authority and the ability to channel down the level of miracles that he was performing. So from the aspect of the righteous life of the world, namely Yesod, it includes 180,000 chariots. And this is the secret of the verse. God's chariot are twice 10,000 and thousands of angels. Psalm 68:17. The masters of the Mishnah established the meaning of twice 10,000 and thousands of thousands, shinan, to mean two that are not included in the twice 10,000s. Shetyaim sheyanam. Leaving only 18,000 that descend with Metatron to receive the 18 blessings from the prayers of Israel and to uplift them to the presence of the Holy One, blessed be He, in the 18 worlds. Meaning the righteous Tzaddik, foundation of the world, Proverbs 10:25, and blessings to the head of the righteous Tzaddik. So the foundation of the world here, carrying the prayers up to the head of the righteous, which the crown is here, Keter. So it's like in different places in the Zohar, it talks about how the angels have to take our prayers up. And if we pray with a group, then that shields us from their kind of like their audit of whether or not we're deserving. They kind of give us a little miniature judgment, like, a little audit, like, do you merit this prayer going up? Well, if we pray with other people, then we are shielded and like kind of like it covers our butt so that we're not exposed, and we're kind of safer in the group. It's like you get a group pass. Since you're here with the group, it's a group tour, people. The prayers are going up. Okay. So the masters of the Mishnah established the meaning of twice 10,000 and thousands of thousands to mean two that are not included in the twice 10,000s, leaving only 18,000 that descend with Metatron to receive the 18 blessings from the holy prayers of Israel and to uplift them to the presence of the Holy One, blessed be He, in 18 worlds, meaning the righteous Tzaddik, foundations of the world, and blessings to the head of the righteous Tzaddik. And I am Ani within the exile refers to the Shekinah that is called I, or Ani, in the meaning of Ve'ani Tefillah, and I, the prayer. The heavens opened. The Hay, 5 firmaments mentioned on the first day, 5 firmaments, the 5 worlds, the 5 worlds of formation. The 5 firmaments mentioned on the first day, the letter Hay of the word Hashemayim, the heavens, meaning Binah. Now, what we want to do is stir open the gates of Binah on Rosh Hashanah, because this is the keeper of all the blessings and the storehouse. I know it's here, but it first comes from here. These are all our blessings. It's also in the column of judgment. And so on Judgment Day, we do have an opportunity to open up this gate and draw down from Binah, draw down nourishment and nutrients from the mother, the supernal mother. The Shekhinah is the spirit, the feminine spirit of God, the one that gives us, the one that brings these blessings down, and that we have to be joyous. Remember, we can't be in grief or in anger, because the Shekhinah won't be able to resonate with that or connect. There's no vibrational resonance. So we have to be in joy. And when Jacob, Joseph's father, was grieving, thinking that Joseph had died, he went from being a completely blessed, like righteous tzaddik person to being almost just cursed and living in toil, and all his blessings just faded and disappeared because he was in such grief. And even though that grief was justified, it's just that the sadness was so thick and heavy that the Shekhinah could not reach him to bring him the blessings that she wanted to give, right? So, just good to know there. Okay, so the heavens opened, the Hay, 5 firmaments mentioned on the first day. The letter Hay of the word Hashemayim, the heavens, meaning Binah, in which are marked the visions of the source of the firmaments, which is, and then the following is it's two of the ineffable names of God, like combined together. So it's really, you're not supposed to pronounce these names, but we pronounce, so they're written out in just the letters, and in Hebrew it's just consonants and sounds, and then the vowels are indicated by dots. So you'll see the tetragrammaton, the 4-letter, the Yud Che Vav Che, and people think it might say Jehovah because they're guessing at what what vowels might be in between the letters, but we don't know. But those letters themselves, just the vowels left, those 4 letters are very significant. They have endless layers of meaning and implication, and they have numerical values, and even the shape of them indicates certain things, and they're associated with the different worlds, and just there's endless chains of association that have to do with these letters. But then there's another set of letters that aren't the tetragrammaton that we know, but that have been woven in to this name. And so they spell this out, which is Yud Vav Daleh He, Yud Vav Aleph Vav He, Yud He Vav He. So we wouldn't normally just go around saying these names, but when you have a purpose, teaching or something like that. But what's interesting is that what I just read aloud, I saw in a dream. Like, I dreamt about that name, which that was the craziest part about the dream, because it was just like I must have remembered it from reading. But I remember reading that passage, and then a few days later, a couple of weeks later, I dreamt about that passage. And then I went back and I reread this passage after I dreamt about it, and it had come up for some reason that day. It was really relevant, but I thought that was really interesting. And I think it's interesting that we're here back at the same passage again. When I read that sentence, I was like, that reminds me of when it says the 180,000 chariots, and the chariot are twice 10,000 and thousands of thousands. And it just sounded like the same kind of thing. Like Jesus said, like, you should, forgive like 7 times 7. And he didn't literally mean like 49 times, it's like the way that they kind of double up and talk about numbers sometimes is really kind of like not exact, or it's like intuitive meaning, but like not like literal. I don't know. And then I think this was the last passage I was going to finish with. I saw visions of God, Elohim, Ezekiel 1:1, 5 lights of the first day, corresponding to the first He of the name Yud He Vav He, that is comprised of 5 lights: Hesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, and Had. Since in the He exists 5 Alephs, punctuated with the vowels Kametz, Zer, Cholim, Cherek, and Shuruk, such as the verse engraved as on the signet ring, holy to the Lord. And each letter, Aleph, indicates the name Aleph Che, Yud Che, Ayah. Because light, or like O-R is the Hebrew word for light, begins with Aleph, and Aleph Che, Yud Che begins with Aleph. Okay. So I think that's all. I just wanted to mention, so we saw the twice 10,000s and thousands of angels. Twice the 10,000s, meaning 2 not included in the 18. It's Metatron. So Metatron comes from Keter. And if I remember correctly, this is up in the endless and in Keter, where Jesus came from, and he also had pulled his disciples from this other outer realm as well, from the endless realm. And when he said, I shall choose you 1 from 1,000 and 2 from 10,000, and they will stand as a single one. It's like that 1 from 10,000 and 2 from 10,000. Like, it makes me think, because it's like 8,000, 10,000, 18. So it reminds me of the 180 chariots that have to do with Metatron, bringing the prayers up and down for the nations of Israel. Right? That's kind of like who the disciples are, right? We have 12 tribes of Israel. We have 12 disciples, and each of them represents an aspect of those 12 tribes, right? So it would only be natural that if Jesus is the completion of the Hebrew journey, if he's the culmination of all the prophecies of the Torah and so many of the writings and the prophecies of the writings of the other books in the Old Testament, sorry, like losing it, then it only seems natural to assume that it would like mirror itself like that, like if like Jesus would also represent, in repetition, like those 12 disciples representing the 12 tribes, bringing those prayers up to Metatron. And instead of it just being the Hebrew Israelites, but it being the greater whole of the souls of those who are in the covenant, bringing those prayers up to the heavens. So leaving only 18,000 that descend with Metatron to receive the 18 blessings from the prayers of Israel and to uplift them to the presence of the Holy One, blessed be he, in 18 worlds, meaning the righteous Siddiq, foundation of the world, and blessings to the head of the righteous Siddiq. All right, and so let's read this little passage one more time. Jesus said, I shall choose you 1 from 1,000 and 2 from 10,000, and they will stand as a single one. And I mean, ultimately, Jesus calls his followers, and it's a rare person who wants to be a true follower of Christ, a true disciple. A lot of people want to be on the winning team. They want to be on the winning team, and they want to go to heaven, and they want to be accepted in the group, and they want to go to the country club, church, a couple of times a week. They want to feel like they're on the right side, but they don't have true transformation occurring in their heart. They don't want to give up the parts of themselves that are, easier to ignore, right? Not everyone will think, I actually want to listen to what Christ was saying and do that. And I think that's where a lot of the chaos is happening right now, because people talk about the whole being a millennial. You were sort of trained with the WWJD bracelet. What would Jesus do? And now the baby boomers who raised us to be good Christians are all mad because we're like, how did you get sucked into like MAGA hate and all that? And they're like, they think that we're not being the good enough Christians because we're not fitting into their cookie cutter mold. But we're like, no, we're actually being better Christians than you expected us to be, because we're literally questioning what the empire wants us to go along with, because we're actually like concerned about what Jesus wanted us to do and be and serve, and how Jesus taught us to be. So we are asking, what would Jesus do? And that truth is inconvenient to anyone who's trying to maintain power and money, or anyone who's been convinced to maintain power and money for the sake of someone higher up than them. So so 1 in 10,000, right? 2 in 10,000. It's a rare person who really says, you know what? The common Christian loves nailing other people on the cross. This is wrong with you, and they should be doing this, and we want to control them so that they don't offend me anymore by doing the things that they're doing their way. You know, all the while making everything prettier for me to live in my life, but doing nothing to help those people in the world who are suffering, or to change circumstances that would prevent suffering, right? So Jesus said, I shall choose you 1 from 1,000 and 2 from 10,000, and they will stand as a single one. That awakening is happening. The Christ consciousness is awakening. People are awakening to Mashiach consciousness. They are standing as one. They're putting themselves on the line. They're understanding what sacrificial love means, and they're starting to question what they've been told they should think it means, and what they should be told is, being a good Christian. And what they're starting to notice is, oh, what y'all have been doing is going around putting everybody else on the cross. But what Jesus asks us to do is to pick up our own cross and then lay down on that thing. After you carry it yourself up the hill, you got to lay down on that thing and you've got to nail yourself to it. That's what Christ asks of his followers. We sacrifice those layers. We let them go because we want to be closer to God. And we want to be more like God, not so we can be power over people and glorious and feel really good about ourselves, but so that we can channel goodness and so that we can repair the people and the things that have been hurt, and we can correct what was dark and make it light. I think I had another thought, but it slipped out of my mind. Oh, I think that's it. That is all for tonight, you guys. Jesus said, I shall choose you 1 from 1,000 and 2 from 10,000, and they will stand as a single one. Oh yes, becoming more like God, unifying, shedding those layers so that we can not only maintain our connection with God, but that we pass through that river of fire quickly because there's just not that much to burn. Make it like a quick shower, not the year long. We're signing up for the very short package. So the more you can let go of those juicy ego satisfactions that you want to hold on to, the lighter, the faster through the fire you will go. Same like what I've been talking about the opportunity that will come up through this eclipse season and through Elul, through the month of Teshuvah. You will have things circle back. And we will think about this and you'll be like, wow, if I forgive, if I can bring myself to forgive and move on and move forward, then that can open up miracles for the year to come. But if I can't swallow my pride, or if I can't let go of my need to be right or justified, sometimes the invitation will come in such an irritating way, like my dad did with me and my brother and sister. And I just wanted to be like, no, we are not going. We already said we weren't. But then I was like, oh, obviously this is the invitation. And the harder it is of a pill to swallow, the more powerful the miracle is being revealed. Oh, God is so hilarious like that. All right, well, that is all for tonight. I am dizzy. I'm dehydrated. I am starving. I'm hungry starvings. I'm starving times. So I'm going to eat, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for our weekly energy oracle forecast, where we will be taking a look at the week ahead and talking about our spiritual weather for the week to come. All right, y'all. Peace.